My name is Andrew Taylor, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the second season of Stick With It. Last season, we had the fantastic host, Mark Hoffmeyer. Without his tremendous work and the fantastic interviews and guests he had, we wouldn't be back for a second season. This season, some amazing guests. I'll invite you now to settle in, relax, and enjoy Stick With It. Welcome back, everyone. It's Andrew Taylor here. This is Stick With It. Today, we're joined with a very special guest, Captain John Cawood, Jetstar Czech captain and a great friend of ours. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
John, so let's start. You have a strange accent, so I assume you're from Victoria.
I'm definitely from Victoria, but my strange accent comes from South Africa.
So South African. So
Yeah.
Can we go all the way back to the beginning, John? How about a little bit of history? So South African born and raised, obviously?
Yes, off a sheep farm.
A farming kid from South Africa.
Yeah.
How did you end up? We'll jump a few hundred steps, but we'll eventually get there. So how did you end up flying, John? Tell us about your flying background.
Well, I couldn't go farming, so the next best thing to do was to go flying. So in South Africa, we all had to do national service. About 3 months into the national service program, they came around and said, does anybody want to go flying? We all put our hands up because it's a lot easier to go for a pilot selection than run 20 Ks a day with a full pack. Of the 800 that went for selection, 70 were selected. Of the 70 that were selected, 50 got through officers' school, and I reckon about 30 of us got our wings.
So there was a compulsory national service scheme in South Africa,
yeah,
of which the recruiters come around and said, rather than humping a pack round, would anybody like to go flying?
Exactly.
So you joined the South African Airforce from that?
I did, yeah.
Straight out of school, via the national service to the Air Force?
Yeah.
And that, where is the South African Air Force base? What's the background for ignorant people like me? Tell us about the South African Air Force.
Well, so you start off on doing your ab initio training on Harvards, T6. Do you know what a Harvard is?
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
very impressed. So many people don't know what a Harvard is. And that was at a place called Donata. You did 120 hours in that aircraft. And then you got streamed. You could either go to jets, helicopters, or light aircraft. I was fortunate enough to go to jets. So I got my wings on the Mackie. In South Africa, it's called the Impala.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah. And South Africa had a version 2 of that Mackie called the Impala Mark II, which is a single-seater and used primarily for ground attack. So I did a little bit of that. And then at the same time, we had a war that we were fighting in Angola. That war ended, which meant there wasn't a lot of flying going around. In order to gain experience and leave the Air Force, you needed twin time. I did maritime patrol for about 2.5 years. Flying an aircraft called the Piaggio P166, also known as an Albatross. Okay. It's a pusher prop. We did inshore maritime patrol with that.
Okay.
We also had Shackletons. Anybody know what a Shackleton is?
I know who Shackleton was, but I don't know what a Shackleton is. No, yeah. Tell us.
So Shackleton is based on an old World War II bomber, the Lancaster. And it was developed for long-haul maritime patrol. Mm-hmm. I was hoping to fly that, but they phased them out around about the time I was going to fly them, and they replaced them with DC-3s. So the DC-3 became known as a Dackleton because they had all the Shackleton posts in the DC-3.
Okay, the Dacker. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so I flew that for about a year, and then I left the Air Force. I did some charter work flying Chieftains, Citation 2, then got a job with an airline flying ADR-72s for a year and a bit, and then South African Airways.
So that explains the Victorian accent, but I guess more importantly, why John's come to speak to us today is the airlines in Australia. So the group airlines, we've spoken to Ryan Smith from Q-Link, Mainline, and now we've come on to Jetstar. So John's a very experienced, highly qualified trainer for Jetstar, and he's very kindly decided to bring his Victorian accent up to the podcasting studio today. So we can talk about the recruitment process, the difficulties, the joys of joining your first major airline for a lot of people, I guess.
Yeah.
So to have that experience here in Jetstar, John, so you went from your first airline job in South African Airways, more or less, your first major airline. And we all know about the troubles that Africa's had. So some time in SAA, and then talk about your career, just so we can explain to the listeners and the watchers how we've got fantastic privilege to have such an experienced person sitting here talking
kind of you.
Well, it's easy. Makes you look good when you're sitting next to me. Absolutely.
Not at all. So South African Airways, you start off as a second officer, known as a boy pilot. Even if you were a girl, you were called a boy pilot because you did menial duties.
So you had girls in SAA at the time?
Yeah.
But you're still a boy pilot?
You're still a boy pilot,
Okay.
yeah. Generally, you do that for 2 years. I was lucky I did it for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then an A300 first officer, then a Boeing 747 first officer. Then I had to bid back to the domestic onto a 320 to get glass so I could leave.
So it would have been pretty new in Africa, the 320, were they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had a few hours on a 320, had the glass requirement, and then joined Emirates. And I joined Emirates on the Boeing 777 as a first officer. Under 2 years there as a first officer, and they offered me a command upgrade on the 330. So 330, 340s. I was lucky enough to be put in South African Airways, I did a training first officer course. So I think that put me in good stead with the Emirates, because I started off there doing some human factors work, followed by becoming a TRI. And then during that time, Qantas offered Jetstar 330s. And Jetstar needed 330 experience to start their long haul. Qantas wouldn't offer trainers to Jetstar. Apparently, it was a conflict of interest. So Jetstar went around the world looking for experienced A330 pilots to help them out. I was lucky enough to get that role. So 330s. Put up 2 years into my 330 tenure, I was offered the training manager position in Jetstar. From there, I flew the Boeing 787, and I'm still on the 787 as a check-in trainer.
So came to Australia to be involved in setting up the international arm of Jetstar.
Correct, yeah.
So with the 330s.
Correct.
So pretty tough decision to become a journeyman. You leave home, long history in Africa.
Yep.
And you decided, well, I'm now going to be a journeyman, and away we go, the world.
But life's an adventure, hey?
Absolutely.
And not only that, is you've got to look out for a future for one's children. Yeah. I didn't want them to go back to South Africa.
So that gets you to Australia to the 330.
Correct.
So let's talk about the last 20 years in Jetstar. Tell us about what you've been doing for 20 years down in Jetstar now. So just about since it started, basically, you've been involved.
Yep. So I've been in coming up in September will be 19 years, I think.
Okay.
So obviously, I think we were 6 direct entry check captains on the 330 with maybe 4 or 5 direct entry trainers on the 330. So obviously on the 330 for a while, I was the Airbus training manager for 6 years. Then we got the Boeing 787, did my 787 type rating, then offered the position of fleet manager safety, which I did for a year. And that's it. I've been on the 787 since, 12, 13 years. And I'm a TRE, TRI, check captain, just being in the right place at the right time, I guess.
Oh, I don't think that's quite true, but not just a check captain. So you hold CASA checks, you name it, you hold them at the moment. That's correct, isn't it? So a super checker and trainer, I guess.
I guess, thank you.
Yeah, no. So, John, it's difficult to explain to somebody who doesn't really understand what joining an airline. You may be very experienced, but an airline life is very difficult to most lives you've ever had before in aviation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the group is hiring all sorts of diverse individuals at the moment, but there are lots of low-time pilots coming into our airlines.
Correct. Which
is a wonderful thing because the industry is so cyclic.
Yeah.
A few years ago, we weren't hiring anyone. Now we're hiring low time. So I'd like to then turn to talk about both the Airbus version and the Boeing version of joining an airline, your first airline, which it's wonderful that we've got John and his experience, and he very kindly agreed to be pretty open about what he's seen over his 20 years odd of checking and training pilots. So let's go. When you join Jetstar as a low-time pilot, you can either join as a second officer on the 787 or a direct entry low-time first officer.
Yep.
So if Airbus jobs, they send the type ratings are done offshore, aren't they? So they'll go to...
So currently they're offshore. So they could be Singapore, Bangkok. I think we've sent blokes up into the UK as well.
Yep.
And so they do their full type rating course there, but it's just a full-on A320 course. It's not a Jetstar course. So when they come back from that, then they get Jetstarized.
Okay.
And they have an extra 5 sim sessions, I think, after that course.
So even the simple things like a type rating, you think a type rating is a type rating, but it's not. Every airline does a different version of the same type rating, don't they?
Yeah.
So you go away and you'll live offshore perhaps at the moment and do a type rating, which is intensive. It's for 6 weeks or 5 weeks.
It's about 6 weeks.
Is it?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of learning in a very short time, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
And the Jetstar pride themselves on being a pretty pure Airbus airline.
I think so. So a Jetstar FCOM is what they base everything on.
Okay.
And then they have an annex to that FCOM. So in the Boeing, it's called the JQ31. And it's how you read the FCOM in conjunction with the Boeing procedures. So there's a little bit of extra, the words you would say as opposed to the Airbus words or the Boeing words.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a good bit of advice to start with. When you go away and do your typewriting, you will be handed the Jetstar manuals, which I guess are on an iPad, so you're not actually
Correct.
physically handed anything.
Yeah.
So do the manuals make any sense if you've never looked at an airline manual before, do you think? Because I'm sure you're involved in writing these manuals and building these manuals.
Thankfully not really. But I mean, I think with the Jetstar induction, they get told how to use a manual suite and what the manual suite means. That induction is so quick. I think it's a week.
Yeah.
And they go through those manuals and they go through things like cold weather ops. That's a lot of stuff they've got to take in that week in their induction program. I think where the real learning happens is when you meet your first Jetstar training captain.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-simulator, he will sit you down, or she, and go, this is what the manuals mean. This is a good starting place. So read the FCOM, following by reading the pure FCOM. We'll then back it up with the Jetstar requirement. And I think Jetstar does that pretty well. And it's a lot to take in, but I think Jetstar does that pretty well when they introduce you to how to use the manuals.
And so as a low-time pilot, then you come back and run through the company simulator training. So that then allows you, in theory, you're type rated, you've been Jetstarized.
Yep.
Away you go flying. And we'll stay with the Airbus for a little while, then we're going to talk to the Boeing, which is, of course, our favourite, but we don't have favourites here. So then you'll be given, as a low-time pilot, we'll talk about them, I guess a super trainer or somebody who's very experienced to be able to fly with a low-time pilot.
Yep, that's correct. So they call senior training captains.
Okay.
And the senior training captain will fly with a low-time pilot for a while before they move on to normal training captains.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that allows them to then build some confidence that the trainee gets somewhat comfortable in a fast jet. You know, the airplanes are pretty sophisticated. They go fast, and 200 passengers is pretty daunting.
Yeah. So
that must be an incredibly challenging job being a super trainer to be flying with low-time pilots.
Yep, absolutely. But in theory, the trainer has been trained to be a super trainer. So not only have they been selected for their training skills, they also receive extra training to make sure that they can do the job properly and proficiently. Yeah.
And part of that is, I guess, the person coach as well, isn't it? You know, we spoke about imposter syndrome with Andrew Stewart. So, yes, we hired you because we want you to be here. You are good enough. We will help you get to the standard, you know.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's a quietly process, I guess, isn't it? Where we start here today and tomorrow will be better. And each day we just keep adding to your skills.
Yeah. Building blocks.
Okay. Yeah. And so then from there, they'll go and do some line flying with a regular trainer, I guess, who also would have to be pretty good because he's still flying with a low-time pilot.
Yeah.
And that's just on normal line operations across the fleet?
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So literally the first time you fly a big airplane is full of passengers and
that's right.
On a normal scheduled service, and away you go.
Yeah. But I think the whole simulator process has set you up really well in order to do that, of course.
So there must be a lot of person coaching in that, because the fatigue levels are massive. When even a normal day's flying, you get tired flying. We've been doing it for a long time. So a young person or an inexperienced pilot, just managing their own well-being is incredibly important, isn't it? Because you use a lot, and I don't have a lot of brain capacity, but I use all of it most of the time, and I get fatigued. You know?
Exactly.
Your brain hurts, doesn't it? So when that's when you've got lots of experience to fall back on. So the positivity, you need to be positive about the whole approach, don't you? Because the trainer is there to assist you. We want you to do a good job. You know you can do a good job. So I guess the trainers spend a lot of time coaching the person as well, don't they? You know, the encouragement.
And I think that's where the whole selection process for the training captain comes in. They have to make sure that person is personable and is able to read his student reasonably well, so that he knows how to meet the student's needs. And I really do think we've done a reasonably good job in Jetstar of making sure that we have trainers that are capable of doing that.
And all going well, some sectors, then they go back, and then there's a line check at some point, cleared to line, away.
Correct. Yep. And then I'm not sure if I think it still happens. You'll be able to tell me because you'd know better at this stage.
Maybe.
But I think 3 months after your first line check, if you're a brand new first officer, you have another follow-up check just to make sure that you haven't developed any bad habits in the last 3 months.
Because it's interesting, you don't realise you're diverging from normal, do you? Until somebody actually says to you, oh, and by the way, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought I was meant to be doing. Yeah. So there's a follow-up check.
Yeah.
So then away you go, and depending on whether you've come in low time or an experience, it depends how many stripes you get initially, a 2-striper and a 3-striper.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So you start off with a 2-striper generally, depending on the amount of experience you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about second officers and the Boeing path. So you do the type ratings on shore here in Melbourne?
I do, yeah.
Yep. And so there's a massive difference between Airbus and Boeing, isn't there? I mean, people other than...
Philosophically, there is.
Yeah, absolutely. Where Airbus is incredibly prescriptive. You learn...
Correct. And Boeing gives you free reign. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess that has its own challenges, doesn't it, really, where...
It does, because it just means that the person who, especially flying a Boeing, you probably have to be slightly more disciplined than if you're flying an Airbus, because Airbus, part of their system, I think, encourages discipline, where Boeing, you probably don't have to be that disciplined. But if you are really disciplined in how you do things, how you procedurally conduct the exercises that you need to do, it results in a really good outcome. So discipline is absolutely paramount.
But of course, the 787 is the most Airbus Boeing we've ever flown, isn't it? I mean, we never admit to that.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of time with the students, especially on the Boeing, teaching them to be Boeing pilots.
Yeah.
And of course, the manual isn't as prescriptive as the Airbus manual. So that's something that has to be taught, doesn't it? Because you can't sit there and read, now I have to say this, because it just doesn't say that, does it?
And then I think this is where in Jetstar, in our OM suite, we've got the JQ31, which is the Jetstar annex to the Boeing procedures. And I think that does become a little bit more prescriptive. So there's an expectation that you will apply your Jetstar overwritten procedures to the Boeing.
Okay.
So it means that everybody's doing the same thing. There's the same expectation from the crew. So whereas there is more latitude, and as our previous training manager used to say, we don't want to build rocket scientists flying the 787. But you still need to follow the Jetstar way of doing things, of course, but it's not that prescriptive.
And do you how good are allowing people to be their own selves, but keeping them in that constraint compared to other airlines? Is it more or less prescriptive, do you think, than say Emirates was, the way they fly their
really
airplanes?
Interesting, because I always say there are really 5 good things about working for Jetstar.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, it's in Australia. Number 2, we fly really good equipment. Number 3, 99% of the people are really nice people to fly with. Number 4 is we always get paid on time. And number 5, the SOPs are really strong within Jetstar. So this is my 4th airline. I reckon it's the strongest SOP airline that I've flown with. So everybody knows what the next person is going to do in this situation because of the strength of the SOPs.
Is that constantly reviewed? You constantly going back and saying, are we still on track with what we're doing and what we're saying? Or, has the rest of the world moved? Or
that's really interesting, because I sometimes think that the rest of the world moves a lot quicker than what we do.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah.
We like to hang on to things, and we're not sure why we hang on to them, but we're hanging on to them. Yeah. So then a second officer, so there's no direct entry path onto the 780, is it? So the direct entry first officers go to the Airbus?
Correct.
And everyone joins the 787 as a second officer?
That's right, yeah.
Let's talk about a Jetstar second officer. It's different to a Qantas second officer, different to most airlines don't have them anymore,
Yeah.
So they're a cruise relief pilot. It's how you use them on the 787?
Yeah, exactly.
We kind of refer to them as apprentices, which is not really fair because they're quite often very experienced pilots as well, aren't they?
Yep.
So everywhere you go on the 787's 3 pilot, or that's a bit of not quite true either, is it really?
Currently, the Singapore flight is the only one without a second officer.
Okay.
Yeah, but everywhere else we have second officers. And I think what's different about Jetstar is the pilot interaction. It's not very hierarchical on the flight deck.
So even just to explain that, so we run a very flat cockpit gradient, don't
Correct.
we?
Yeah.
In the good old days, the captain his word was absolute gospel.
Yeah.
He was a very high position. The first officer was lower than that, so there was a steep gradient from one seat to the other seat. And the second officer we totally ignored, and they were simply there to do the walk around and pass the sandwiches forward and things like that.
Yeah, but that's not the case.
Okay.
Second officers are encouraged to speak up, and sometimes you go, that second officer probably shouldn't have been that direct, but it's up to the captain as to how he handles it. But I think it's better that way than them keeping quiet. Yeah.
And we argue that that's part of the reason why we're safe culturally as aviators, isn't it, in the South Pacific or this part of the world, that anyone's able to speak very freely. And we've all the Qantas group has worked hard on training us to have that freedom to speak, don't we?
Yep.
So part of the simulator training, when you're running sessions with pilots who have never flown for an airline before and have quite often been single pilot, that must be challenging and yes, I've done a multi-cockpit crew type course or whatever they do, but quite often that's not how things really happen.
It's really interesting depending on the young pilots coming through. They think that they have to compete with the other pilot that they're doing their type rating with. We understand that there's assertiveness training in that, but what we want them to do is work as a crew. So when you work as a crew, you work together, you make suggestions. Some call it order suggestions sometime, so that you'll work well as a crew and you're not competing. The objective is a safe outcome for the flight, not to show the other pilot that you're better than him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quite often you'll have to detrain that competition out of a pilot.
Correct.
So that's not actually what I'm trying to teach you to do here. I'm teaching you to support your mate, and so that the outcome together is far better than the single outcome.
Yeah.
787's a nice aeroplane to fly, isn't it? You must enjoy instructing on it.
Yeah. It's not a very difficult aeroplane, thankfully.
Of course it is. It's incredibly difficult to fly. I said it's a nice aeroplane, John. We don't want to give away any trade secrets here. We're still under the illusion that they're incredibly difficult to fly. It's great, isn't it? It's a beautiful aeroplane to fly.
Yeah.
So instructing on it must be very pleasant.
It is.
And the type rating on a 787, that's 10 sims or how, it's a...
Well, it is 10 fixed base, even though the last fixed base session is in a full flight simulator. And generally we put the motion on. And then it is 8, was it 9 full flight sims followed by a type rating test. And then after the type rating test, depending on your pathway, there's either another 1 or 2 sim sessions after that.
Okay.
The other one would be low vis operations, but obviously second officers don't do that because they're not involved in a low vis takeoff and landing. And the other session is RMPAR, which a second officer would do that session as well. Yeah.
And then recurrent training for second officers, do they do the same recurrent training that the first officers and captains do? A modified version of that now?
Yep. So we have evidence-based training, and every 6 months they
let's
2 sim
talk
sessions.
about that. I don't know what evidence-based training is, so sorry. We'll go back to the actually cyclic program. So let's talk about evidence-based training for those who don't know what it is, like me.
Oh,
in theory, I know what it is, but I'd like to talk about that. So my version of it is, in theory, the airline goes, we have weaknesses in these areas or individual weaknesses, so we're going to train to that. I haven't quite seen it work like that. Is that a
So evidence-based training, day one is essentially a first look. So there would always be a theme. So we have 4 years of cyclic training. And each year is a different theme over the 4 years.
So it's not based up, if somebody's messed up on this, we better go and do a cyclic on that because in theory it's not like that. Okay.
Yeah, correct. So there is a theme. And it's a broad-based theme. And day one is a first look to see how the crew operate as a crew. And there are various issues that they'll look at. They're called competencies. So are they competent in communication? Are they competent in manual flying? Are they competent in the 9 competencies that they'll have a look at? And it's a first look concept. And it's all about adult learning as well. So the crew have to take responsibility for the outcome. And I'd go 99% of the time, it's a good outcome, but how did they get there? And it doesn't necessarily mean that the check captain that's running the simulator session, his idea of how they got there isn't necessarily the only and the correct idea.
Okay.
If it's a safe outcome, they debrief themselves. It's adult education. Then they also have to try and reflect and go, well, this is where I could have done better. So then when we go to day 2, there's opportunity for training from the check captain. And he will select a scenario that allows the crew to work on their deficiencies, if you like, that they've recognized from day 1. So as a whole, it makes them better pilots to have more proficient, better and safer outcomes in the future. And I really like the program because I think it's tailored to the pilots and it makes for a much safer airline and also gives the pilots more confidence.
It's an interesting one because for years we trained and at the end of the session or checked, at the end of the session, the checker would say, oh, tell me what you did wrong. And most of our training was denying you ever did anything wrong and say, no, that's your job. You tell me what I did wrong. I'm not going to give myself up for all my mistakes.
Yeah, but I don't think check captains say, tell me what you did wrong. Check captains go, let's review what happened. How did you get to there?
Maybe now, but in the good old days, okay, you tell me, and you would hide your mistakes, make him or her out you rather than out yourself. So it's a different way of training. So we're very happy to share what we weren't happy with, and in most sessions, guys go, oh, yeah, it was good. I'm happy with how it happened. Or is that a gross generalization? Or
probably because it depends on the skill of the check captain because they've got to tease out how the session went.
Okay.
So you don't ask somebody, how did that session go? You go, so tell me about you ended up there. How did you get there? What were you thinking? Why did you do that? Is there a better way of doing it? If there's not a better way, that's fine. Have you considered any other way of getting to a similar outcome? So it really teases out the pilot taking responsibility for how he manages the aircraft.
And do you get light bulb moments now where crews will go, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't realise I was doing that, do you?
Yeah.
And that's part of the EBT process.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure how we got distracted there, but that
I'm a massive fan of this process.
And where's that come from out of aviation, or where's evidence-based training come from, John? Do you know the background of that?
That's a really good question. I know it was developed in Europe, and there's a lot of kickback initially because they thought it was taking the basic training out of your sim sessions. So there's definitely a place for EBT, but there's also definitely a time where you need full-on proper training, where if you could do an engine failure, this is how you depress that rudder and you hook your big toe over the whatever. Yes. This is how you fly it. Yeah. So you still need that. So on day one of the evidence-based training, the first 2 hours is a first look concept. The second 2 hours is you're going to go and do your normal bread and butter stuff like engine failure after takeoff, your single engine ILS approaches, go around and stuff. So there's still opportunity to train that. And then obviously day two, there's opportunity for further training. Mm-hmm. But the old days where you go, this is exactly how you manage a depressurization, for instance, that doesn't really happen in evidence-based training anymore unless you reflect and try and work out how to do it better.
And I'm sure Andy Blair, Captain Andy Blair won't mind, but his father, Terry Blair, was a Jetstar when I was there. So, and Andy just had an engine failure at V1. So V1 is the most critical point in the whole takeoff departure. So the Qantas 520, they had a V1 cut, lost an engine at the most critical point, and they did a fantastic job. And I sometimes wonder, we used to do lots and lots of engine failures on takeoff, don't we? Are we still as good at stick and rudder as we were, do you think? Because I don't feel like we do anywhere near as many as we used to. And my point there was, Andy, they did a fantastic job. It hardly made the news it was that well handled.
Yeah, I agree with you that we don't do as many, but I also think because the adult learning concept gives the pilots confidence, and if you've got sufficient confidence, I think you still do a reasonably good job. So do we do a worse job now than we did, say, 6 or 7 years ago? I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think a confident pilot is a good pilot, which is a safe pilot. And evidence-based training makes them confident.
And see, I can ask you these questions because you are the expert on this topic. So it's not as if we're not spitballing, and I actually get to talk to the people who have been instrumental in implementing this in our part of the world, haven't you?
Well, I've been part of the process, but
that makes you an expert. You're a subject matter expert. So is training more enjoyable under this system for the trainer and the trainee, do you think, John?
I think it's far less stress for the trainee when they come into the simulator, where they know that they're allowed to make mistakes because they're going to learn through their mistakes. Whereas in the past, it was really difficult to make a mistake because you got graded and very easily could be graded to not proficient. Mm. Whereas these days, if you take responsibility for your mistakes, and in day two, if you are better at what you did in day one, the outcome is a lot better for the pilot. And I think, I don't think I should talk statistically, but maybe I will. Yeah, so I think
we're amongst friends here, so nobody listens to this. So you can share whatever you like, John. Absolutely.
So I think at one stage in Jetstar, we had the world failure rate was somewhere around 3% of pilots fail during their simulator cyclic sessions.
So recurrent training, so keeping our licenses.
So 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's stressful. You don't want to be part of that 3%.
Absolutely.
When I first joined Jetstar, it was higher than that.
Was it?
Yeah. Not a lot, but it was higher than that. Now that we're doing evidence-based training, I think it's less than 1%. So does it mean that we've got better pilots? Do we think the system is more lax, or has the system taught our pilots to be more confident and be better pilots? I like to think it's made our pilots more confident and to be better pilots. So
that's the benefits of a mature training system, where you're able to retrospectively and introspectively look at your own systems and say, are we doing, how do we benchmark against the rest of the world? Are our pilots well trained? Are we able to support them? So let's talk about the 1% there, John. Everybody has dramas at some point during their career, which is a very natural, and it's heartbreaking for most of us. Nobody likes not doing well at work.
Exactly. And 9 times out of 10, it's something out of the cockpit that has influenced your not so good performance.
Is it? So you can trace it back to some other external factor.
Exactly.
A lot of the time.
You've come to work ill. You are very fatigued. Something's gone wrong at home, and that all impacts on how you perform on the day.
And do you see stuff? And again, we won't share publicly, but see stuff in the simulator and you know the pilots and you go, I just don't know what's happened there. I can't put my finger on what's happened.
Yep.
And that happens sometimes.
Yep.
That Black Swan event where you go, I'm not sure what happened there.
Yep.
So how does Jetstar support pilots who may have a hiccup during training, I guess? So one is a pilot-to-pilot support, and then an organisational support, and of course a association support. We'll talk about all of those. So pilot-to-pilot, what programs do you have at Jetstar to support pilots?
Well, I mean, obviously, if there's an issue with training,
yes,
the training manager will look after that. And
so that's an institutional support, isn't
correct.
it?
Correct. Yeah. I think that's really good. If there are issues that have impacted on the training, we have a Trust Pilot program in Jetstar.
So what's a Trust Pilot, John?
So Trust Pilot is trained up by the Qantas Group.
Okay.
And, well, other pilots should have trust in them, I guess.
So it's a colleague, so somebody,
yep,
another pilot, okay?
It's another pilot, and they all ranks. So if a captain wants to speak to a Trust Pilot, he doesn't have to phone a first officer if he feels that he would rather speak to captain. There are captains available. I think we've got 2 check captains who are Trust Pilots. So the idea is that check captains would find it difficult to speak to, say, a first officer Trust Pilot or a captain Trust Pilot. That's why we have check captains as Trust Pilots as well. So a check captain can phone a check captain and go, these are the issues I have. Could you help me out? So, there are various issues that Trust Pilots deal with, and they're not trained to solve the issue. They're trained to how to redirect the pilot with the issue to resources that can help it.
So it's a colleague who you may have flown with who's done some extra training to become a Trust Pilot. And quite often the first step might be you ring up somebody you know saying, listen, I've had a drama. Can we talk about it? Because quite often they'll go, oh, believe it or not, me too. Or it may not be the same thing, but my list of dramas I've had over my career are very long. So I'm happy to share all my dramas. So the institution, so Jetstar has the training will get involved, training manager will get involved with some support. Quite often it's very simple, some recurrent training, some confidence building, and away you go again. And of course at APA, we have a 24/7 welfare department.
Correct.
Which we have experts on call 24/7. So the Trust Pilot quite often will say, well, have you called APA? Give them a call.
Correct.
And then we'll pass you on to an expert. And quite often they're talking about it can be very cathartic, can it?
Yeah.
It gets you your confidence back that you know the system is there to support you. So the good old days where people were out to fail, it's just not how we do business anymore, is it? No, we want people to be good employees, good pilots, good colleagues, good friends. So we absolutely support them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you enjoy that Trust Pilot role, John? I'm giving away that I happen to know that you're a Jetstar job. Well, nobody enjoys it, but it's a very valuable part of our tool set, isn't it?
So in the years I've been a Trust Pilot, I don't think maybe I've taken 4 or 5 calls. And sometimes it's pretty confronting.
Yep.
So it's not really enjoyable.
No, it wasn't the right word, I guess.
It can be confronting, but it is... I think it's uplifting to know that you can assist in making it better for some people. Yeah.
And being involved in policy, is that an enjoyable part of the job, John? Like the Airbus, when the Airbus first came to Jetstar, do you feel like you're able to make a difference? So, no, I think we don't have to go down the same trodden path. We can do things differently. At a new airline. I mean, Jetstar was a new airline, which is fantastic.
And I think that's another really good thing about Jetstar. We've got so many people from so many different parts of the world. It's not only Australian with only an Australian background. So we have experience that have come in from other parts of the world, hence my funny accent. And
your Victorian accent, as we spoke about, yeah.
And we can go, well, this is what we've seen elsewhere. And we can try and include those procedures or those thought processes within the airline. So I think Jetstar's been lucky that way, that they've been able to lean on experience from other parts of the world. And I think it's made for some reasonably good SOPs.
Must be incredibly satisfying giving somebody their first type rating, I would imagine, when you can sign their paperwork and say, congratulations, you're now a 787 pilot.
Yeah, probably in the last 2 weeks, I've signed off 5 pilots for their type rating in the simulator, and 2 of them, I guess they were slightly older second officers. Well, I don't think they meant me to see, but when they left the simulator, I had to look after the simulator. They were jumping and high kicking and throwing their arms up in there. Yeah, so that is nice.
We take that. Yeah. We lose that side, don't we? Yeah. You get a few type ratings in your logbook and you actually realise it.
Yeah.
It's an incredible thing, isn't it? Yeah. And I'll turn up at the airport and look at that airplane. It brings me great joy. I mean, staying up all night's not particularly joyful, but the thought of joining that club, we're not yet.
Yeah.
You see people love aviation who don't necessarily involve, but it's one of those industries that people just love airplanes, don't they?
Yeah.
So the joy of actually signing someone's logbook, I think that's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you up to at the moment, John? So a checker on the 787.
Yep.
And just run of the mill. What's in the wings at the moment at Jetstar? I guess you're now looking at running that airplane further than it's ever been flown before.
Yeah, I believe so. They tell us that they're going to refurbish the aircraft, and they're looking at sending us to destinations further away. We have the A321 XLR coming in, which they reckon can do the bulk of what the 787 currently does. So I think they're looking to reinvent what our 787 can do. So with that refurbishment, we get a proper crew rest, which we didn't have before.
Okay.
And I think they're looking at up to 15-hour flights, maybe.
A long way, isn't it?
It is. But when you would know, what do you do, 18 hours?
Yeah, but we've got a wonderful crew rest, and I'm supported by a wonderful organisation in the background.
Yeah.
So then the Airbus, so at the moment, 320, 321 Classics or whatever they're called, 321 Neos, 3 XLRs. So there's a lot of 320 variants in the group.
There is, yeah.
And you can turn up to work and literally fly any one of those airplanes.
So on a single day, an Airbus pilot can change aircraft maybe twice in a day. And when they change those airplanes twice in a day, they could be the 3 different variants.
Is it?
Yeah.
And the Airbus is good in that you can literally hop out of one and hop into the other and they're more or less the same? Or
I think that's the thought process. Bear in mind, I haven't flown an Airbus in 13 years. But yeah.
But talking to the crews.
Yeah. And as I said, SOPs are pretty strong. So I think it works reasonably well.
That's probably enough talking about the serious stuff. I'd like to go back to Africa. Can we go back and talk about some past stuff? The flying in the South African Airforce during wartime, that must have been pretty interesting.
So I was at the tail end, so probably 2 courses ahead of me, pilot's courses. They were the last ones to get shot at properly.
Really?
My colleagues, I think, some of us, especially the guys that flew helicopters, I think they were shot at quite a bit. Whereas I guess myself and the other guys that were on jets probably weren't shot at as often as the guys that were our seniors. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's really nice not to be shot at, I guess.
So I guess that was pretty much the Wild West. So you flew low and fast and all sorts of crazy flying.
So we were trained on the Mark 1, 300 knots, 50 feet, full ship formation.
Really?
I think the Mark 2, we could go up to 320 knots, full ship formation, 50 feet. And the reason why we did that was the Russians, because the Russians and the Cubans supported Angola. And
was that a border dispute? Excuse my ignorance.
Oh, no, not at all. I think, it's like South Africa's Vietnam War, and I think they were really worried about communism seeping down south.
Were they?
Very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they used that as the excuse to try and protect the borders, even though they were the Namibian border as such, not really the South African border.
Okay.
But they didn't want communism to seep through to South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was an idealistic battle more than anything.
Yeah. So South Africa supported the nationalist movement in Angola, whereas there's the communist movement, and they all had names like MPLA and all stuff like that. Yeah. And because they're supported by Russia with Cuban forces, they had mobile radar, and nobody liked us. So all our equipment was older than my grandmother. And so we had to develop tactics so that we could fight effectively against modern equipment in those days. So their mobile radar meant that we had to fly everywhere low level. Yeah.
It would have been incredible as a young kid.
You're 19 years old. You don't know any better. You just think it's normal. So I think every 3 months we had to do night flying. You go up into the circuit and you fly at 1,000 feet at night. You go, whoa, this is high. Yeah.
And do you think that training, I know that training, so that helped you then when you started, eventually got your first jet job, going back to low-time pilots again. So having that grounding at fast and low made the transition onto the jumbo.
Yeah.
That first jet, it was just another airplane?
Yeah, just another airplane. Yeah. Yeah, it was. But we were flying with people that had similar experience to us. So in South African Airways, I'd go 70% of the people were ex-military.
Were they?
Yeah. So.
But South Africa, like Australia's got a big general aviation community as well, hasn't it? Yeah, it's a big country. Lots of flying airplanes.
Yeah.
So you've got a diverse range of pilots coming into SAA like you do coming into Jetstar.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Captain John Cawood today. This is Stick With It, and my name's Andrew Taylor. So we've been talking about joining Jetstar as an airline, as a low-time pilot. So we just talk about some giveaway or some takeaways for pilots joining the group that may not have never worked in a big organisation before, because Jetstar is part of the Qantas Group. It's a massive organisation.
It is.
You may have known your boss well in your previous job, but quite often you'll turn up here and you wouldn't have a clue who the chief pilot is or the boss is. Yeah. So our main interactions are with people like you as trainers, aren't they? So that's you become a face for the flight ops as well, don't you, really?
Yeah.
So some little wise things you've seen which would really help pilots joining.
So I reckon when you start your training and you think you are not achieving the way that you'd like to achieve, you have to feel free to speak up, and Jetstar is really good at helping you. So if you're struggling, speak up and ask for help, and there will be heaps of help. Number one. Is
there a standard pattern of trainees coming at Sim 3, everyone starts struggling? Or do you see a standard pattern, do you think? Or you can't even generalise like that, John?
I can't generalise. I think it really has to do with the personality of the new joiner as well. Okay. So if you are struggling, speak up. The other thing is maybe you're not used to the discipline of aviation. So if you're disciplined if you know that this is what's required of you for the next session, you have to be disciplined in going to go and do the work.
So that's some pre-study before you turn up for the next session.
You can't expect your instructor to give you all the information.
Okay.
What he does is he facilitates the information that you've already recouped, I guess.
And that's sort of down the adult learning theme, isn't it? Where as an adult, we expect you to know what you need to know, and we'll just fill in the holes if required.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and another thing that I like telling all the students is aviation isn't only about aviation. In order to make aviation work for you, you have to be a fit body, fit mind. So make the time to go and do something like a long walk, a run, go to gym, do something, because you can't just sit and do aviation. If you look after your body and your mind, everything else falls into place, especially on the wide body. If you're on the wide body and you don't do exercise, you become a wide body.
Yeah. Thank you. We spoke to Dr. Brendan Appleby a few sessions ago about exactly that. So he's a strength and conditioning expert. And
oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So he PhD, 25 years in elite sport, and he absolutely said the same thing. He said even when he's dealing with elite athletes, he still encourages them to do other things. So for us, in theory, we're using our mind often, so it's about getting distracted. So whether they go walk, run, it's that balance where you think, I can't take any time off because I need to be studying, but we just don't study effectively, do we?
No.
When things go bad, reach out. It's easy, isn't it? Well, it's not easy, but there are some wonderful support around it. Yeah. So via the Trust Pilot program, training will get involved at some point, as they should, because it is their organisation and they should do that.
I'll go, most instructors in Jetstar, if they start training you, they will phone you up before the time and say, this is me, I'm going to be training you. When they're finished, they might have 4 or 5 sessions. When they're finished, I'm going to go, 90% of the guys will say, if you have any questions about what we've done, here's my phone number, please feel free to phone me. And I think the guys do. So it's really collaborative that way.
I've done 10 type ratings, and on my last type rating, the trainer about 3 months later sent me a message saying, just checking how you're going.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great. So I know now going forward, if there's ever any dramas, I will pick up the phone and speak to him because he'd gone to the trouble to reach out. Of course, APA Welfare's here 24/7 if at any point you need to reach out. Airbus, the domestic network, a lot of people, if you've just come in as a low-time pilot, you've probably never used the Jefferson chart either. You may used a DAP chart. So there are simple things like that, aren't they? Spending some time looking at Jefferson, which is different.
Correct, yeah.
And you can't be expected to know everything about everything, but it helps if you know a little bit about some things, doesn't it? Yeah. Just take some time, do some. It requires work, doesn't it?
Pre-study is really good, yeah. And that's where that whole discipline comes in, yeah.
John, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Everyone, that's been John Cawood, and this has been Stick With It.